Sorry about that. Okay. So welcome everyone to today's How to Child Rights series event, which is the first of the two events with a focus on child rights and equality. Today, we'll be presenting the main findings of a review of existing child rights and equality resources, guidance, and cases. To demonstrate this one area of work, we'll share a specific case study of child rights and equality work addressing SOGIESC using the Universal Periodic Review process from Thailand. My name is Rahina Hussaini. My pronouns are she, her. I work as the Senior Global Advisor, Gender-Based Violence Prevention and Response with Save the Children International. Thank you all for joining us today, and we look forward to an engaging and interesting conversation. Today, the session will be in English. Unfortunately, we cannot offer interpretation. We do apologize for this, but we'll share a follow-up brief within the next coming weeks with key materials from the discussion today. Please introduce yourself in the chat box, include your role and organization, and we would love if you can share any child rights and equality tools that you have or you know of. Thank you. We really appreciate this. So please go ahead, introduce yourselves in the chat box. So before we delve into today's theme, I just want to introduce the How to Child Rights series for those of you who are joining for the first time. The How to Child Rights series is a platform of practical tools, guidance, and case studies that are developed by civil society in collaboration with civil society organizations, academia, and others. The objective is to develop partnership across the child sector using participatory approaches to inspire each other on how to apply right-based approaches in practice in our daily work on child rights in the development and humanitarian sector, and show how we can contribute actively in making legal and political commitments to children a reality. All tools are publicly available and all sessions are open to all. And we want to encourage peer collaboration and learning using the tools in developing and the development of new tools. Today, we will aim to identify best practices in the sector to encourage broader use of existing tools while also highlighting gaps or missing resources needed to strengthen child rights and equality work. To make this practical, we will showcase the case from Thailand, illustrating processes and practices that can be adopted in right-based equality work with children. As a child right-focused platform, we strive to connect child rights with equality efforts, avoiding duplication, ensuring clear messaging, and developing essential tools for the sector. This is why we conducted a child rights equality analysis and mapping of existing tools and guidance. Child rights and equality are central to international frameworks like the UN Convention and national laws grounded in human rights principles. A right-based approach addresses discriminatory policies, engaging civil society and children to drive systemic change on child rights and equality issues. So for the next 90 minutes or so, we will be focusing on child rights, equality, and mapping results. Blerina will be talking to us around this. And then also we'll be looking at the UPR Thailand case study. Ami would share this with us, and then we'll have a Q&A session, and then there will be a closing remarks around this discussion. As I mentioned earlier, we would please invite you to share any tools which we might have missed, or that has been recently developed that we are not aware of. Please share it in the chat box during the session, and if we have time, we can delve more into that. You can talk more about that tool during the Q&A session. But please, as the discussion happens, please feel free to share that tool in the chat box. Also, would encourage you and please request that you put any question related to the presentation or any question you might have around child rights and equality in the Q&A box all through the session. Thank you very much. I look forward to a fantastic discussion, and I now hand over to Anna. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rahina. Hello, everyone. My name's Anna, and I work at Save the Children as an evidence uptake advisor. And just before we get into the real meat of the session, where we're going to have Blerina and Amy talking through the new tools, we wanted to have a little bit of interactivity and get a better sense of who we have in the room. So some of you might be familiar with Slido, some of you maybe not, but you can see on the screen and also in the chat box, there is a link to join us on Slido. And we're just going to have a few questions so that we can, see who we have in the room. So as everyone begins to join, the first question that we have for you all is, what country are you joining from today? The great thing about these events with How to Child Rights is we often get people from all around the world. So I can see 10 of you have replied already, quite a few from Thailand, Switzerland, Romania, wow. South Africa, Bangladesh, we're really covering a lot of continents, Italy, Australia, Gambia. Okay, this is amazing. We've got, people really from all over the place, which is such a wonderful thing with these events, bring people and ideas together across borders. So I can see that 24 of you have replied already, which is great and counting. I'll just give it an extra few seconds for everyone to join and to add in your countries. Lebanon, Mongolia. Yeah, we've really got a wonderful range. So hopefully lots of you are able to join us. That's great. So the next question that we have for you is to understand whether you've been involved in creating any tools, guidance, or good practice documents when it comes to child rights-based equality programming. So is this something you've been involved in before? But it's either way is absolutely fine. We just wanted to get a sense of who we have in the room. And it looks like so far about a 50-50 split, exactly a 50-50 split at the moment. So some of you have, some of you haven't. I think it's great to have a bit of range in the room. So for those of you that have, that's incredibly exciting because hopefully we'll be able to incorporate some of your tools. And for those of you that haven't, that's great too, because you're hopefully going to hear about some really useful tools that might be useful to you. So yeah, great to see. So a good range. And then finally, just to see what kind of areas of work all of you are associated with, because we know that we have people coming from all sorts of different expertise and background, it would be great to know which of the following areas of work you've been involved with in the past. So we've got quite a few different options for you. You can select as many as apply. So gender equality, child rights programming, child rights reporting, disability inclusion, Indigenous groups, and SOGIESC and LGBTIQ+. So lots of you, 75% responding so far have been involved in child rights programming, which is amazing. But then we have got people from, at least someone has been involved in every single area, which is fantastic. You know, amazing expertise across our attendees today. So that's great to see. And, you know, and no one's been involved in everything. So I think hopefully that means that everyone's got something to learn from today's session. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing the Slido now and go back to the slides, and I'm going to hand back to Blerina.
Thank you, Anna, and thank you everyone who joined today. I think it's great to see colleagues from all over the world and representing all thematic areas, and especially those 4 thematic areas that this mapping analysis is trying to address. So I would really reiterate what Rahina mentioned in the very beginning. We would be happy to hear from you and learn from you more. So please feel free to add in the chat any contribution that you might have. So I would like to open by presenting this child rights and equality mapping analysis, which was undertaken early this year. And it was aimed at, like in the next slide, we might see a bit the content that I'm going to cover for today. So an introduction, a bit on the scope and objectives and the key themes that this mapping covers, few words on the methodology and some of the main issues which were discussed and were found out during the process of the analysis, and then moving more to the those thematic areas which the analysis covers, and then I will stop a bit on the recommendations and some acknowledgements. So very quickly on the scope and objectives. So the purpose of this mapping, which was conducted on behalf of the How to Child Rights series, was to really provide an analysis of recent guidance tools and good practices for child rights-based equality programming. It focuses on 4 thematic areas, which are gender equality, SOGIESC, children with disabilities, and other equity-seeking groups like indigenous children. Who is this mapping aimed for? It is aimed for a wider target audience, especially on the child rights sector, definitely aimed at civil society organizations and professionals out there, in order to support programming to ensure that diverse groups of children have equal access to rights and services. So the key objectives of the mapping itself were to identify the gaps in the existing guidance, but also to highlight good practice and impactful areas for new tools and guidance. On the next slide, we would just to present a bit on the methodology that was followed. So definitely it was a mixed method approach, which combined desk review, web search, and key informant interviews. So there was an extensive analysis of resources done from key organizations on tools and guidance that I could find online. We attempted to focus on the time period of the last 10 years. But again, there were some pivotal older resources which were also consulted, or which were very much building, let's say, the basis or the grounds for more tools to be developed. But there were also some targeted search terms like equality, child rights programming, children with disability, equity, equality, gender equality, gender rights programming. So a combination of terminology was used to do a target search. The other part of the methodology was the snowball approach. There were key informant interviews undertaken, and the learning from the key informant interviews would open new doors for me to see to reach out to other people, or to reach out to new websites or new publications that were put online, or where I was referred to. So these key informant interviews were organized in a semi-structured ways, so to really gather some insight on practices and or challenges and innovations faced from professionals in the sector. Definitely the ethical practices were also kind of applied, like there was an informed consent obtained, confidentiality ensured, but all of this you can find also in the annexes of the report, which was shared. On the next slide, I would like to start and to present you a bit on the content of the report. So we try to summarize the report in a way that it presents issues and challenges which were identified, issues around which are more general, but also issues which are more focused on tools and guidance or barriers into child rights programming. So one of the biggest concerns that was shared with me from the key informant interviews was the remaining challenge on societal perceptions of child rights, where children's rights and equality continue to be considered secondary to those of adults, which means the societal respect for these rights remain still inadequate. By having this situation, it diminishes somehow the urgency of addressing child-related issues within communities by not having child rights a priority. There is also, it remains and it continues to see a prevailing misconception that children's rights are a luxury. It's like a more shopping list. And this is very much present in many communities, especially in the more remote ones or in focus in the more disadvantaged groups. and such somehow contributes to trivialize the legitimate needs and rights of children. So it hinders progress in creating an equitable environment for this. Another issue on the next slide, please, Anna. Which was brought as a concern during the interviews was the civil society practices. Which means that especially for local civil society practices or for grassroots civil society organizations, they struggle to follow up, to engage with accountability bodies like UPR, UNCRC, like the Universal Periodic Review or UNCRC. But even when they they manage or they achieve to engage, then they struggle to follow up on the recommendations from those accountability bodies, which means back in their localities, back in their communities, following up recommendations coming from the mechanisms which are very important for child rights reporting. It's a struggle, sometimes because of lack of capacity, sometimes because of barriers, because of all those societal perceptions. So it might differ. And there is a lack of local engagement also, which this poses a challenge for civil society organizations themselves, especially in low-resource countries. So child rights programming sometimes is imposed without proper community involvement or proper consultations or proper considerations of context or of capacities at community level. And this then transfers or can lead to a resistance, from community to kind of achieve success or to progress in terms of child rights programming. So definitely here there is a key need that was well articulated to prioritize, like whenever we do programming for child rights and we develop guidance or tools, we need to prioritize local consultation, include awareness and community involvement, so to ensure effective and sustainable programming in this regard. Another area where you, like from all the key informants and from the review that I was making, I could see there is a bit of confusion around information overload and misdirection. And I could see that also myself. I could experience it myself through the vast and majority of guidance and publications that I have read and I have reviewed. This overload of information and potentially not filtering of it does possess a significant barrier to effective child rights-based equality programs. So when you are a young professional or a civil society organization which might want to go online and look at what is there and what can be beneficial to your work or what can guide your work, there is a bit of confusion of what it is child rights equality, what it is process or procedures, what it is legislation, what it is kind of minimum standards to follow. So this whole overload of information does possess a significant barrier to effective child rights-based. Amidst of this sea of information, valuable resources on equality often get overshadowed by non-essential content or so that consume times and resources. So I think as a joint community, we all together should think of like what would be the best way of how to present that type of information. And it requires a bit of streamlining information dissemination to ensure that the focus remains on crucial aspects of equality. Another issue that was identified was the shrinking civil space and technological disinformation. Again, local to global initiatives, but this globally, the space open for civil society to operate is shrinking, and we are all feeling that and experiencing it. At the same time, there is a rise in the spread of technology, which might drive, could be a threat and an opportunity in the same time. No, it can drive disinformation that undermines the rule of law, democracy, and the role of civil society. Challenges include finding effective strategies to counter disinformation, to counter fake information, and navigate reduced space for TSOs advocating for equality. This was, I think, the first chunk of the issues. Another category, which you can see that, again here, what civil society also mentioned is the increase in intolerance. So it seems like we are faced with a rising intolerance for different groups in society, coupled with increasing polarization, which does possess challenges in promoting equality, especially for those target groups that this mapping also was focused. And to address this requires a highly proactive approach, including by developing guidance and for addressing discriminatory attitudes. So being really open and strong in giving messages out there. So we need to balance support to all parties, maintaining neutrality in a constructive way, but in the same time, supporting victims without biases, which are essential considerations to be included in the new tools and policy documents. At the end of the day, it's about child rights equality. All children should be equal to accessing rights. The second group of concerns, of issues that were also discussed, and this mapping does analyze and does present, is about the focus and the scope of the existing tools and guidance. So for what I was hearing from some of the interviews, the very first comment was about the generalization in tools. Like, some of the tools are very much generalized. They do not account for local differences. What about tailored approaches? So tailor child rights and equality program to specific cultural, social, and economic contents. They do not exist. They are not much there. So we need to move away from a one-size-fits-all approach. And this was unilaterally mentioned from all the key informants. Bottom-up participatory approaches. Again, I mentioned in the previous slides, engage local communities through genuine partnerships to resonate with their values and norms. This can help address resistance and foster local ownership. And the reframing perceptions. So shift from viewing children's rights as secondary or luxury to recognizing them as fundamental to a just and inclusive society. On the next slide, I continue with the same focus. An issue which was very much identified is the complex discrimination. So children face discrimination on multiple intersecting fronts, including gender, disability, ethnicity, and sexual orientation. So it can be a Roma child with disability, which is identified as with a different sexual orientation. So how are the tools addressing such an issue? Where is the intersecting guidance that we are providing to professionals to do such type of programming? Another challenge is that tools often fail to fully unpack this complexity of intersecting inequalities and address the cumulative impact of those various forms of discrimination. Because we tend to kind of develop tools only in one more specialized area. So as awareness of intersectionality grows, future tools must incorporate an understanding of how different identities overlap and how they reinforce each other. What about the tools? Are they child-friendly? There are a lot of tools, in fact, which were child-friendly, using the child-friendly language, approaches to engage children directly in discussion around equality and rights and non-discrimination. And it has proven that when such tools are used, they do empower children to understand and advocate for their rights and foster inclusivity, but also respect for diversity from the very early ages. However, we do see a gap in representation. So while it is true that we have child-friendly language developed tools, even with the participation of children, not always that participation had to ensure the participation of the most disadvantaged groups. So we need to put an eye on it, put a focus on it, and put an effort to make sure that when new tools are developed, like books or whatever child-friendly guidance that we do, to really include children from also the most underrepresented groups. Another thing which I kind of explored was the opportunity for civil society organization to also learn from innovative ideas and innovative tools that other sectors are using. And those could include books, novels, multimedia content, something that do introduce concept of equality and child rights from the early age, but again, which can be reader friendly and very interesting for children, but also communities. Then we touch a bit on, here some of the examples of the child-friendly tools and guidance that promote equality, but then in the annexes, you definitely would find a more expanded list of such tools. On the next slide, I tried to also cover the geographical reach issue, and because that kind of came out to my attention, not only from the key informant interviews, but also from the desk analysis that I was conducting. It is very true that you could see a tendency of differences based on the geographical reach or presence of civil society organization. I mean, it's a gap, but in the same time, I think we should consider this as an opportunity because it means that it's a lot to learn from regions which are not we are not used to work with, or we are not used to cooperate with. For example, I have presented here some of the examples, like I could see a strong regional focus when it comes to rights of indigenous children. So there are numerous tools available for the right of indigenous, particularly in countries with significant indigenous populations, which means those countries could lead the way and be the example for other countries to follow when they have small communities or small minorities with indigenous populations. And such key regions could be Australia, Canada, and parts of Latin America. Like that, I could see they were very much developed and they had very interesting tools produced. Such tools often address historical and cultural context specific to these regions, focusing on protecting indigenous identities and ensuring access to education, healthcare, and justice. But they might be improved through a more rights and equality perspective. What about LGBTQI+? I did find out that the Nordic countries were they had so many progressive approaches in this regard, and they are expanding it also in regions and in other contexts. They have made significant strides in developing such tools with child rights framework that promote LGBTQI+ and inclusivity. So they do emphasize on inclusivity, anti-discrimination, and education to foster understanding and acceptance of such identities. Norway, for example, had developed some very interesting child-friendly materials, so to speak to children from the very from the very early ages, so to include short, engaging novels, so that children could also start learn about respect, dignity, and equity from the very early age. The same trend was also found in the Southeast Asia. Like there were great tools and programs where not only tools, but also case stories come from countries such as Nepal, Thailand, Cambodia, Philippines, or Vietnam, who have developed such contextualized tools for LGBTQI+ and children's rights within child rights framework. So in the context we are living today, where the rights of LGBTQI+ are really put in doubt, we do see very disappointing developments from a political point of view or legal point of view in some countries. Here we have great examples that come from Asia, where we could learn a lot and could use a lot for more advocacy and more push for programming in this respect through our child rights equality lenses. What helped them to achieve such results? Cultural context. So this is a great example of how context was used to the beneficial of child rights programming. So the tools that have been developed there emphasize the importance of education and sensitization, both also internally to foster acceptance and of diverse identities, and also while definitely considering local cultural and social norms. On the next slide, please, Anna. On this chapter now, I would like us together to move to some of the key gaps identified. So what I presented up to now were more generalized findings, and now I'd like to lead you through a more focused gaps and trends in each of the thematic areas of the focus topic areas part of this mapping. So the first one is on gender equality program. So one of the biggest challenges and gaps challenges which somehow then creates gaps or barriers is about countering backsliding of rights. So the global trend is that there is an increase in rollback of gender equality rights worldwide, driven by anti-gender movements. So in this, within this global situation, children's rights are more at risk. So there are some movements who manipulate children's rights as a pretext to undermine gender equality, particularly impacting women, girls, and LGBTQI+ children. So in the name of child rights, the gender equality is being attacked. So there is a need for constant vigilance there to combat these backslidings. And also tools and guidance should support this effort and continuously be refreshed and updated to maintain progress and prevent regression. What about the interconnectivity between gender equality and climate change? So definitely it's a complex intersectionality there. Gender equality and climate change are interlinked, particularly affecting girls and women who bear definitely disproportionate impacts. So I could see a gap there in the tools, probably because like this whole climate change and gender equality, like the consequences of it, we are only seeing now. So probably is the right time that the resources developed to be also updated or to be backed up with more focus on how to address the intersectionality between climate change and promote comprehensive strategies for equal rights in this challenging intersection. Another slide on the key gaps on the gender, the multidisciplinary response to gender-based violence. So this is a critical concern, is a pervasive issue, the gender-based violence, which requires a rights-based multidisciplinary approach. What is the complexity of response there? It's because tools must address also the intersection of various disciplines. So not only from a protection point of view or violence, anti-violence point of view, but also including disciplines such as psychology, sociology, like social norms and social definitions, medicine, like health perspective, law, definitely, which should be the very first, education and governance. So by seeing it in a complexity, the response, we could effectively then do programming which combat gender-based violence. So there is a recognized gap here to have tools and guidance that facilitate coordinated cross-sectoral actions. And then again, on the lack of intersectional approaches, so the tools do not sufficiently consider the experience of children facing discrimination at the intersections of race, gender, disability, sexuality, and other identities. So again, it is reinforced here, the intersectional approaches. Another, on the next slide, these are just an example of the tools that exist from Girls No Brides, from Oxfam, from UNESCO definition, Save the Children and other partners in the resource center. So again, in the Excel sheet that that is attached to this report, you would find a more extensive list of interesting tools that can be used in this regard. The next topic is about children with diverse sexual orientation, gender identity, expression, and sex characteristics. Gaps identified, again, there were around professional-centered approach. I have put here the example of pink competency, which does very much focus on building internal expertise, so to be able to do good programming out there for children. So leverage the expertise of professionals across all sectors. Another one is around international collaboration. We need to bridge local and global. So collaboration between local and international partners is key to addressing such challenges. While we have big organizations who have all the resources and the knowledge to develop such guidance and tools, they cannot be well received at local level if there is no proper consultations, which we also address in the very beginning. So tools to be culturally sensitive. There are great opportunities here, some key opportunities around legal advancement, awareness building, and collaborative approaches, which could intensify advocacy and training. Another gap in the same topic on the next slide is around mainstreaming LGBTIQ+ issues into broader agendas. So make sure to really raise voices, raise concerns in all global or broader international events to do more advocacy and like integrating reporting on this issue on the UPR, for example, or UNCRC. We would hear later a case from reporting to UPR from Thailand, are great mechanisms that had shown great results. Cultural sensitivity, we addressed that, so understanding cultural and religious contexts, so to have tailored approaches, and again, internal capacity building. Enhance that, I cannot stress enough how important it came out to enhance capacity of our own staff, so to support these children, to promote equality and to address discrimination. On the next slide, again, I think there are some resources here, like from UN, the definitions, which again set the background of this work, and we could use more and greatly. We could leverage a lot about what UN has produced and set as minimum standards and guidance. But again, there are some other organizations, both in US, UK, and in other parts of the world, but also, as I mentioned, in the local context to find a lot. And here I have also highlighted that experience for Books for Children, but also I think one of the partner organizations, which is free in Norway, has developed a lot and has a lot in their websites. Not all of that was in English that I could access. Some of it was in Norwegian, and that was a bit of a language barrier for me to do the review, but I could see it was there. So probably we need to learn more from it. Again, the next topic on children with disabilities, some of the key issues or gaps that were identified in the tools or that were also articulated from the key informants were around the age group. Like, it seems like the tools that exist or the guidance that exist address very much the specific needs of elder children or adolescents and young people with disability, and there is a little focus on this group age 3 to 6 or even 0-6. So again, another thing, the same as with the other topic areas, disability inclusion should be recognized as an essential component of child rights programming, not as a sub focus area, because often we see it referred to as a specialized sub focus area, where in fact it is a component of child rights programming. And the barrier to the tools and guidance developed in this topic is a communication barrier. So the information is out there, but very little information is on formats which organizations of people with disability or of children, of young people with disability can access and use, like Braille, large print, or audio versions. Like, really, again, here we need to be more innovative toward a tailored approach to the target audience of using, who need to use this guidance. Another slide, again, on the children with disabilities, are some of the tools that have been suggested from you and from some of the key informants. Some of you are part of this meeting today. So again, great resources, great tools, also great learning type of web pages to navigate to. Like there are whole web pages to navigate through in this regard. And also some of it, for example, have also been translated or been written in also child-friendly language, which again was very, very, very positive to find out that it exists there. Next slide, please, Anna. The other topic that the review took into consideration, as I mentioned, it was the rights of indigenous children. And there were several gaps here, but I have kind of summarized a few of them, concentrated. You can find more in the report. The first one is about, again, intersectionality between climate change and indigenous rights. It is a critical intersection. And it is critical because indigenous groups might be living in those areas which are also mostly affected by climate change. But in the same time, we don't see them very much included when it comes to providing solutions to these climate change consequences. So there is a need for inclusion to involve indigenous children in child rights programming when it comes to addressing climate change. And also they do possess great knowledge from their traditional ecological models, which could be the solution to some of the concerns or some of the consequences that they are experiencing. Another problem, a gap has, or critical area to kind of have in mind when developing tools, is around access to basic health services. Is it culturally appropriate? Does the health services take into consideration their cultural practices, and are there guidance out there? Not much. So they are generalized from a child rights perspective, but then when it comes to contextualize it to the needs of community or to the needs of the cultural practices of a certain group, we need to be better there. And the same appears with access to the resources and materials. They lack child-friendly resources and education in terms of indigenous languages, cultural perspectives included into mainstream education. So there is a bit of not much on their history and practices on the existing guidance. And that might impact their engagement, because they do have a pride in heritage and identity, which everyone should be respectful. So they need to then find it expressed into those generalized ideas, which not always is the case. The next slide, please, Anna. While sorry for my camera, I'm having some technicality issues. So while I just presented you the major gaps identified, I would like now to summarize on the recommendations for future development of guidance and tools. And the recommendations are presented in a way that it summarizes the general recommendations for any guidance in any sector, in any themes, and then also some key recommendations for each of the topic areas that were presented today. It is very important that our tools that we develop all together to be simplified and plain language. So all the people interviewed do have mentioned this, that also when you talk to local professionals, they prioritize simplicity and plain language in tools and guidance. So to balance the local and global knowledge, like talk with simple language, present things in a steps type of format or on a hierarchical format, so that it can be simply understandable and followed. The second recommendation for our tools is to contextualize child rights. So then to move away from one size fits all and to tailor more to diverse cultural contexts. To address intersecting inequalities, really happy to focus in our efforts there. To prioritize local civil society organization. There is great guidance for civil society working with marginalized children. They have great experience at community level. So we need to draw upon such experiences. I could see that there is a vast majority of tools developed for organizations like us, like UN, like whomever had also the financial capacity, but probably the local NGOs know much more when it comes to tools which are relevant to their own communities. So we need to make a way to ensure there is a way of cooperation and integration of that learning into tools which we develop. And to explore with innovative formats, like civil society tools seem to be very traditional. I think there is now time to use more digital and visual engaging forms that resonate with the modern, with this alpha generation or digital native audience to increase impact and engagement. On the next slide, here is like a capture of the area of attentions for us. So content, target to address specific gaps, very context specific and clear, easy to use and relevant. Format should be easy to digest with more visual appeal, not many words, but still be concise, avoid unnecessary complexity, rooted in a child rights-based approach to equality. So as I said, there are a lot of tools which are very much practical tools, but they fail to be stronger by being referred to a child rights-based approach. And audience, I mean, always to consider the audience that we target, because there is a diversity of audience out there and we need to consider different needs of users in this regard. On the next slide, I really would like to finish because I think I took all my time. But this has been a quite extensive report and an analysis and great tools out there, and I loved it doing it. But I really want to have a sincere appreciation to all individuals and organizations who contributed to this mapping. And when I mention contribution, doesn't mean necessary to be a key informant interviewer from me. I think all of you are a contributor because all of you have the name in one of those many guidance which exists out there. All of you have contributed with great knowledge to all the wealth of materials of information that I was able to access and see being published out there. So a great thank you to all of you, to all of the civil society and child rights sector, including the How to Child Rights series team, and thank you to Save the Children sponsorship team for making possible this analysis and all the sector colleagues. I have enjoyed this very much, and thank you for the opportunity given to me to do this analysis. And I'm happy now, together with other colleagues, which are part of the call here, to answer any question if we can, or at least hear more from you and kind of let us know what tools do you also know are there which could be beneficial to be included in this mapping, definitely. Thank you. I will now hand over to my colleague Ami from Save the Children Thailand, which would present a great case study, which somehow also make it more practical now what we were also speaking under the gaps and recommendations when we talk about one of the topics for SOGIESC. Hey, Ami, over to you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Blerina, for talking about the equality mapping. So for Thailand case study, so my name is Ami. I use she, her pronouns. I'm from Save the Children Thailand. And for the case study that we'll be presenting today, It's the work that is not done by Save the Children, but it's the work that's done by the coalition that we have formed to advocate for children's SOGIESC rights. So we'll talk about how we used the child rights, the UPR, to advocate for the children with diverse SOGIESC. So for the next slide, please. Okay, maybe just like a little bit of background about the human rights standards. So like the Convention on the Right of the Child covers all rights for children, including that like the states have to ensure that children are free from violence and discrimination. And another key international framework that we also refer to when we talk about LGBTIQ plus children or children with diverse SOGIESC is that everyone, regardless of sexual orientation, gender identity, gender expression, or sex characteristics, has the right to state protection from violence, discrimination, and other harm, whether by government officials or by any individual or group. So this is from the York Jakarta Principle plus 10. So this background is to say that like the international human rights standards also have specific description around like LGBTQ plus children that we can refer to, and that is the base of how we advocate for child rights. And what we also know is that a lot of LGBTQ plus children still face violence and discrimination in many places in their lives. For example, like when they go to school, in education, when they want to receive healthcare, or their mental health is at risk. A lot of them also at risk of not facing violence at home. And all this, like for example, in Thailand, there is still lack of protection laws for LGBTIQ plus children. There is no legal gender recognition in the country where transgender children are most at risk. And from the mental health research, it also shows that a lot of transgender children face like the risk of committing suicide as well. So with these situations that LGBTQ plus children are facing, it's as like CSOs come together to work and to advocate for LGBTQ plus children's rights. And for Thailand, even though like we ratify the Convention on the Rights of the Child more than 30 years ago, Thailand has been delaying in submitting the CRC report for over 10 years now. So with the delayed in submission, we decided that we would utilize the Universal Periodic Review, or the UPR, to advocate for children's SOGIESC rights. The Thailand's engagement in the UPR in the first 2 cycles has been no specific recommendations on LGBTQ plus children, although there was one recommendation in the first 2 cycles that mentioned SOGIESC rights, but mostly for adults. Okay, next slide, please. So with the process of how we did the advocacy for children's SOGIESC rights. So first we identify the partners. So the coalition is formed during this stage where we reach out to child rights organizations and LGBTQ plus rights organizations, and we together formed a coalition for children's SOGIESC rights Thailand, which has 8 organizations altogether. And we, like as an organization, we conducted consultations with children and youth in different regions of Thailand, and representing diverse groups as well. For example, children from ethnic minority, religious minority, or children in rural and in urban area. And these information from the children and youth, highlighted their situations, and then they formed the recommendations on what would be the urgent need for them. So these then form into the report, the UPR report that we submitted through the UPR mechanism. And once the report is submitted, we did further consultations with the children and youth. And since like we first consulted with the children and youth in different regions of Thailand, we decided to did the follow-up ones as online due to budget and due to like saving time on the travel of the children and youth as well. So with the consultations, we formed into the 2-page fact sheet that became the advocacy tool to advocate with external stakeholders and ensure that the state will receive the recommendations on children's SOGIESC rights. Then we did the diplomatic briefing. So one of the key factors in the UPR cycle, because it's peer-to-peer for the diplomats, we needed to host a session with diplomats and ensure that the students' voices are there to highlight the issues and recommendations that they needed. And we also applied to join the pre-session, the UPR pre-session as well. So during all this, we also had support from like UPR Info in ensuring the child safeguarding in discussing at the UPR pre-session as well. So after like the advocacy of like with the diplomats and at the UPR pre-session, Thailand received the UPR recommendations. So that happened in 2021. And once Thailand received the UPR recommendations, then we also delivered another statement once at the Human Rights Council. So that's when Thailand give like the final decision on what recommendations they would accept and what recommendations they would note in order to make the plan of action in the country. And so we try to have the youth and like have the children and youth voices there in all of the stages, and also that the government and the stakeholders will get to listen to the children and youth that are being impacted. And now it's in the process of monitoring the government's plan of action. So we're at the following up stage during the UPR midterm report phase. So next slide, please. So this shows like the 2-page advocacy fact sheet that we used for the UPR advocacy before getting the recommendation. So what we found during this during the advocacy is that it's very useful to have this easy to read document for diplomats, for other external stakeholders. So with these 2 pages, we like did the consultations with the children and youth and to highlight what issues that they really feel like is urgency and that they really need implementation of the government. So with the challenges that are highlighted, we also have the case from the children and youth as well. Like we highlighted the cases that they are really facing challenges in life and link to the recommendations that we are advocating with that the government has to implement. Okay, next one, please. So what we got from as the result from engaging with the UPR is that it's the first time that Thailand received recommendations through the UPR on LGBTQ plus children. So overall, like there are 12 SOGIESC rights recommendation. So eight of the recommendations are general for like LGBTQ plus population, including marriage equality, having a law enacted on SOGIESC, and having the protection of like LGBTQ plus rights in general. But for children and youth, for the children's SOGIESC right, we receive 4 recommendations, and particularly one recommendation that was from the Voices of the Children and Youth. So one of the recommendations that we have been focusing on is training the education teachers and reviewing the curriculum when they teach to promote positive attitude on diverse SOGIESC. And there are also other recommendations that need to eliminate discrimination based on SOGIESC in education and for children. So these recommendations are important because the Thai government accepted all of the children's SOGIESC rights recommendations, and then they produced the plan of action, which is at the national level with related government departments that they are responsible to implement these action plans until the next UPR cycle, which is another 4.5 years. So we are now following up and monitoring these recommendations. So next slide, please. So you might be wondering, like, the process has been like a few years. What have there been like any challenges and how to overcome them? So some of the challenges that I might highlight here are that some of the children and youth, like, they are still in the context where it's not safe for them to be open or like to talk about LGBTQ plus or like SOGIESC rights publicly. So there are some risks that we have identified for the children and youth themselves. So the risk and mitigation measures were like really required when we wanted to do the public and media engagement. Like when we talk about the advocacy through like UPR mechanism, one of the important factors is also like public engagement. But a lot of some of the children and youth, they would prefer to have like alternative like media presences. So like they would use pseudonyms. They would not show their faces, and they would prefer to have their quotes written down and not in a video. So that's the mitigation we took, and we were still able to publish or like discuss SOGIESC rights in the public without putting the children at risk. And through this like UPR journey that we've talked about, there was actually like a little bit limited time for a full stakeholder mapping. So when we reached out to the LGBTQ plus organizations or the child rights organizations, we reached out to the people that we were already familiar with. So at that time when we submitted as 8 organizations, but now we're also in the process of expanding the coalition to ensure that like other like smaller groups of LGBT and child rights organizations will be able to join and then work together and build like a bigger coalition for this. Another challenge is the language barrier. I think like this is also a common issue for children and youth in many countries where English is not the first language, but English is the language that used in like these advocacy mechanisms. So one of the mitigations for this is like we did the every preparation process in Thai, and we asked with the support of UPR Info, we were also able to get the children and youth to speak in Thai and have the interpreters engaged during the session as well. So the interpreters were interpreting every process for the children so that the children understand the actual process as well. And since this also happened during COVID, we also try to mitigate COVID risk, and some of the activities were done online, but children still prefer face-to-face activities. So in the past year, we also did face-to-face activities with the children as well. And there's still a need for capacity development with the children that are specific on advocacy skills. Sorry. So this is something that we do this is something that we are doing during this UPR midterm follow-up, where we support the children to identify the duty barriers and to work on the advocacy skills. Right. Next slide, please. So this is now like the monitoring process after the UPR recommendations that we have and the plan of action from the government. So the coalition works together to do the children and youth consultations, and we are expanding the coalition as well. So this picture is also the dialogue with the government. So we were able to engage with the key government stakeholders who are responsible to implement the plan of action with the children's SOGIESC rights recommendations. So each are from different departments. For example, the Children and Youth Department, the Education Department, the Rights and Liberty Department, where they have to monitor the LGBTQ plus children's issues. So the children and youth themselves were able to ask the government directly on the progress of the implementation, as well as give the recommendations of what they need in order to improve it. And we are also advocating through different platforms consistently. Like we also have a change.org petition. We also did online survey. We also produced videos on the students' engagement in the UPR. And we also merge these recommendations in different activities that we do and plug in with media engagement as well. Okay, I think that's all for the Thailand case study. All right, thank you.
Thank you so much, Amy. And I will be stepping in to lead the Q&A session. My name is Marie Busk-Larsen. I work as a Global Senior Advisor in Save the Children International on monitoring demanding child rights. So I'm very pleased to be here to lead the Q&A part of this session today. I want to thank Blerina for her great work on this mapping exercise. We know equality is a vast area. There's a lot to cover. And of course, by no means this is exhaustive. This has not been an exhaustive exercise, because there are also many materials out there. And I'm really pleased to see already in the chat that we have participants who've shared additional resources. And that's also what we wanted to aspire with this session launch, to have more resources or also complete or add on to this mapping. But we'll talk about that later on. And thank you, Amy, for sharing on the Thai case study with the UPR. I think it's important work to support children and of course coalitions and adults working with children on this specific topic, which we know can be sensitive in many contexts, but really important also that we support these groups of children that are more marginalized as well. So we can see some policy change. Yeah, Marie.
Really need to also thank you, Francis. I'm not sure if she joined us today. For the great support, and thank you also for the great criticism, and definitely it was very, very important to shape this report. Thank you to both of you.
Of course, the work is all done by you, so yeah, thank you for doing that. And we will now move into a Q&A. I think just before, we would like to invite UPR Info. We have some of our trusted partners. UPR Info is a trusted partner to the How to Child Rights series and a lot of the work that we do. We work jointly with them. And I think we might have Nicoletta here who wants to say a few words about, UPR Info and the work that we can do with the UPR. I'll just see if you can speak, Nicoletta.
Yes, hello, hi. Thank you very much, Marie. Thank you, everyone. I think Mona is also online, and I'm sure she'd like to add also a few inputs and tools that UPR Info has prepared with different partners, organizations working on children's rights, notably like Child Rights Connect as well. I like just to give a few inputs after the presentation and the case study of Thailand. So I would like to highlight two things on how the UPR can be an effective mechanism to promote SOGI rights, children's rights, but it's something that can be adapted to all other human rights issues. First is its nature, that it's participative, and the fact that this participation is not only linked to the participation engagement of civil society organizations and states, but we should start also keeping in mind the importance of engaging also with other actors such as parliamentarians, local authorities, or the judiciary. And I say this because I was looking a bit of a country, the Philippines, in the same region, and as how they have been receiving recommendations on SOGI related issues. And where in the third cycle of the Philippines, there were only 2 recommendations on this topic. In the fourth cycle that recently passed, we saw that thanks to the strong engagement of many different organizations working on SOGI rights, there has been an increase of recommendation on this topic, even including information and recommendations on non-discrimination to children and SOGI characteristics. So we have seen an increase from 2 to 10 recommendations. But what I want to highlight is, although the state has not supported those recommendations, at the national level, the fact that recently, only in June, a local lawmaker has said that even if the SOGI bill in the Philippines has not yet been approved, it's been 20 years that this bill in the Philippines has been in discussion. There are still national laws that together can be applied to protect the rights LGBTIQI plus adults and children. So this statement from a local law maker is important to see how they can have an important role in pushing for advancing the law, and the fact that also this parliamentarian basically mentioned the importance of including in this debate local actors, so local authorities that on the ground can apply these national laws. And lastly, the other thing that I wanted to say is not also to forget the role that the judiciary can have, because really linked to a recent case, a Supreme Court's ruling in the Philippines set an important precedent acknowledging that the rigid classification male-female does not reflect reality, and the Supreme Court says explicitly that although the state does not recognize this, this does not reflect the reality. And so this is like from these, let's say, small but positive steps, they can all be used with the UPR recommendations to continue the advocacy work and protect the rights of children and adults with LGBTIQI rights plus. I don't know,
Right.
Mona, if you want to add something. Or...
No, I
Thank
think
you.
you were
Right.
very
Mona?
complete. Thank you, Nicoletta. No, just wanted again to just reiterate, UPR Info commitment really to support children participation in the UPR process. And for that, we have been developing in collaboration with Child Right Connect, the guide, the UPR and me. That is also available in audio when I was hearing Blerina in terms of the importance of accessibility. And I was very also pleased to hear Ami presenting how children and youth, young adolescent has been participating into our pre-session. So we are very committed really to give them a place at the table to support their advocacy. One element that I would like to add is just the importance of follow-up of those recommendations. And I think Blerina has presented well, in fact, the challenges that children and young adolescents face also in the follow-up. So really, I think it's really important to work with government, with local government, as Nicoletta was saying, so that to ensure that children are part of the process, consider children in the reporting, but also in the follow-up for the implementation of recommendation, and to ensure that funds are also allocated for the implementation of recommendation that relate to children's rights. And just to give an example related in more general on the promotion of gender equality, we have been, for example, in DRC, an engagement with traditional leaders to end child marriage, and also to take into account really to highlight the importance of engaging with local authority and to find, as both Amy and Blerina showed, sometimes innovative way to address the violation of children's rights. And also want to give an example also in Bangladesh, there has been a working on the educational level, the Brave Mind campaign to work on gender equality, engaging really young adolescents around the age of 12, so that they're really engaged to promote gender equality and combat gender-based violence, especially violence against women and girls. So it's really important, this work in terms of education. So I've got this example given about reviewing the materials on education materials. It's also looking at that, but also really reviewing and adding some materials. And I think it's really important to engage at an early age, young adolescents, so that we create a more equal communities and more inclusive. Thank you very much for this very interesting webinar.
Thank you so much, Mona and Nicoletta, for your interventions. I agree, of course, it's crucial that we both have legal and policy change at a national level, but of course we also know awareness raising and education around sensitive issues like this, and also where we face cultural barriers are very much needed. So I think it's multi-spectrum that we really have to address when we talk about equality issues as well. So thank you so much. Time is running. I see we have a person who has a hand up. I think let Anne-Marie. I think I will just. I hope you can speak now. I'm trying to ask you to unmute. It doesn't seem to work though.
Yeah, Anne-Marie, you should be able to unmute yourself if you would like to speak and have a question. And if anyone else has a question, you can also raise your hand and we can allow you to unmute.
Marie, are you able to unmute? It does say ask to unmute here, which I don't know if it works well. Meanwhile, we wait for that. I saw there were some questions in the Q&A box, and just feel free to interrupt us, Anne-Marie, if you can speak. Maybe we can do these. I saw already we have some answers. So, Blerina, you answered a question in the Q&A box. We could just maybe mention it here. There's a question from Lossie. There's a greater concern from local authorities and adults that civil society organizations and other development agencies have more focus on the rights of children and responsibilities of parents. There is less talk about the responsibility of children as well. These are making the resistance to their involvement and participation in child rights programming as they feel powerless over the children, I'm assuming adults. And how can we address this moving forward? Do you just want to speak to this, Blerina?
Yes, I think that's a great question. And in fact, experience has shown us that when we started to do child rights work in my country, we started very much to empower children around their own rights, because we felt that was a problem. They didn't know about the rights. But then we found out that we were causing more harm, because then children were being punished from the adults, from parents, also from their teachers. So that was a great learning 25 years ago, that when you do child rights programming, it's very, very important collaboration and keeping the balances. It's key. But in the same time, we need to be very clearly articulating that child rights are not something that we are providing to children because us adults have the authority. We need to talk about child rights where children are right holders, the same as everyone else. And by involving also parents and children together in sessions when you do child rights work, it's very, very key to success, because they together then talk about child rights and responsibilities together. Like, okay, also in my country, when we rewrote the Child Rights Convention in the child rights friendly language, children also developed a paragraph on what responsibilities come because of such rights. For example, the right to education. What is their own responsibility about attending education, learning, progressing, learning about respecting each other? So, I mean, it's very much on how we organize the work and how we convey the messages. But we should definitely be clearly articulating it's a right. They are right holders, and then we need to cooperate and collaborate so to find the right medium of doing this work together.
Right. Thank you, Blerina. And yes, of course, they are rights holders, so they do have the rights inherently of what parents might mean, but of course they live with parents, so the collaboration is really the essence here, I think, as you were saying. Thank you, Blerina. We have another question also from Lassie. I think we will ask Ayush to respond to this. So the question is, creating behavior change at grassroots requires a lot of resources for total inclusion and participation of everyone. But these resources are very limited, especially for grassroots organizations like community-based organizations or youth groups. How can we, such groups from developing countries, get access to flexible resources to make their work more impactful at the grassroots? So Ayush?
Right. First of all, thank you very much for the question. I believe that everyone in this webinar would agree that social and behavioral change is a long-term process, right? So it requires resources, time, and coalitions as well. Most importantly, as Save the Children, we believe that we need to have the intention to collaborate and build alliances if we are to effectively address issues concerning children, especially children with diverse SOGIESC or LGBT children and young people. I would also like to look at resources from two parts. One is not just financial, but social as well. Well, the financial aspect of thing is very important, not denying that. I believe that the social side is even more critical, right? The social dimension includes understanding norms and the push and the pull factors related to gender and LGBT issues, as well as the norms that govern individual behavior. Therefore, the stress that we really put in our programming is to do a behavioral analysis and generating insights which are very contextual, and that is very pivotal as well. Additionally, not all societies are progressive, right? So regressive norms still exist. So it's very crucial to build alliances and coalitions at the national, regional, global level to advocate for gender and LGBT rights. The other thing that I would like to flag is lived experiences are so invaluable, right? So while designing and implementing LGBT-informed programs, advocacy, or even partnerships, we must ensure that the voices of those most impacted and marginalized are included in this discourse. We should also partner with allies who have greater representation in this area of work. Lastly, let's be very cautious of performative activism, as this might derail the growing movement around child rights and LGBT movement, right? If you lack experience working on LGBT issues, but still feel very strongly about the issue, then please do reach out to organizations like Save the Children, as we have been working with LGBT organizations and partner, leading the LGBT and gender movements in highly conflicting and volatile settings as well. I hope I answered your question, and that was a great question again. Thank you so much, Over.
Thank you so much, Ayush. Yes, I do think the key essence here is really partnership. And the essence of the How to Child Rights series is really partnership, but of course also in your local or national context when you talk about grassroots level, the more you can link up with key actors, complement each other as well. It's also a way of sharing resources as well. We know there are limited resources. Yeah, thank you, Aish. So there was a question we were not able on, and we're running out of time, but Anne-Marie wanted to send a question through to the chat box. I don't see it yet. There's a comment also from Mana in the chat box about she's from Free, an organization in Norway, and Norway is also up for the UPR, and recommendations on LGBTIQ children is also included in their recommendations, and they're working with partners in other countries to support this as well. So that's great news. We know this is happening in some countries, but we also know, of course, that there is a resistance in other. And of course, this session is also about, we're highlighting the case of SOGIESC, but of course also looking at other areas like disability or indigenous. So if you have any resources or anything you want to share on those areas, of course, we would also be inviting them. I think we probably, in the interest of time, have to round it up. I don't see a question from Anne-Marie or more hands. We weren't able to unmute, unfortunately. Maybe you can send us also questions afterwards, Anne-Marie. We would be happy to follow up on it as well. I think we will, in the interest of time, hand it over to Ayush to close us off as well. Thank you, everyone, for intervening.
Thank you, and hello everyone again. I'm Ayush Joshi. My pronouns are he and him. I'm the Director for Advocacy, Campaigns, Comms and Media at Save the Children Nepal and Bhutan Country Office. And I'm also one of the co-chairs for Save the Children International's SOGIESC team, alongside two wonderful colleagues, Amy, Sandra, and Andy. Before I deep dive, I want to express my gratitude to our speakers today for addressing such a mission-critical topic. I believe that all of us in this room can agree that anti-gender and anti-LGBT movements exist, and the patriarchs of patriarchy are often found among us, both in this room and beyond. This reality highlights the importance of spotlighting these issues, particularly around, let's say, the stigma, discrimination, and systemic barriers faced by children globally due to their sexual orientation, gender identity, expression, sex characteristics, and disability and ethnic status as well. Children from marginalized or, let's say, underrepresented groups are often at risk of having their rights neglected or violated. Hence, it is essential that we adopt a rights-based approach and utilize best practice tools like we discussed earlier to close existing gaps and make sure that children and young people are leading and informing this process. The findings from the Child Rights Equality Mapping and the case study on Thailand's UPR provides us with very valuable insights and inspiration for advancing child rights equality in our future initiatives. This report also emphasizes the need for SOGIESC informed intersectional lens, allowing us to better understand the unique oppression and discrimination faced by LGBT children and youth. I really hope that today's discussion will encourage each one of you to adopt an intersectional lens in our work. This perspective helps us avoid a one-size-fits-all strategy, enabling us to address issues in a more targeted and SOGIESC sensitive manner. For example, let's say a girl in one of our communities may also be disabled and identify as lesbian or bisexual. Therefore, to effectively support LGBT children, we must consider the power dynamics, influences, and norms that shape the lives of children that we work with and for. Also, the next time someone asks you why on LGBT or SOGIESC, just tell them that the UN Convention of Rights of the Child, UNCRC, believes and promotes the rights of all children, regardless the SOGIESC. And the convention guarantees the rights without any discrimination for every child, including children who are from diverse SOGIESC backgrounds or LGBT children. Now, in terms of the next steps, I think you'll also see the PowerPoint. This mapping and analysis tool will help identify best practices and gaps within the child rights sector while encouraging collaboration among key stakeholders. Collaboration alliance is something that we've been talking from day one to now. Let's build on to that, because we should not be competing within ourselves, but collaborate with ourselves to uphold child rights. If you're interested in collaborating, then we encourage you to review the identified gaps and propose revisions for existing tools. You can form a group to lead this work forward. We'll soon share a feedback survey where you can sign up to take leadership or participate in this effort. We have another event planned for this fall focusing on child rights and equality, where we will present a case study on how to use child-centered social accountability to reduce discrimination and social exclusion. This session will provide additional time for you to share best practices in child rights and equality that you found valuable in our work. Thank you again for your commitment and engagement on this vital piece of work. And let's not forget that we are working for all children, regardless their SOGIESC. So thank you so much, and it was a wonderful session. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ayush, and to all of our speakers today. You might have seen I've posted in the chat a feedback form. We would really love to have your feedback so that we can improve these kinds of events in the future. And there's also the option in there to add your email. So anyone who, we talked a lot about collaboration today. If you want to be involved in this kind of work, if you want to collaborate with others, we really encourage you to leave your email so that you can be part of and potentially lead some of this work as well. So I will leave the meeting open for another minute or so that you can add, so that you can access the form, and then we'll close it out. But thank you so much, everyone, for attending.